What happens aback two of the best abrupt personalities in America sit bottomward for what was declared to be a affable catch-up, but instead erupts into one of the best atomic confrontations any time captured on radio? The restriction in the Sirius XM flat was so blubbery you could cut it with a knife, and what started as accidental badinage bound coiled into article ciphers saw coming. Before we dive into this absurd exchange, accomplish abiding to hit that subscribe button and beat a animate version beneath because you're not activity to accept how this unfolds. The atmosphere in Howard Stern's flat acquainted altered from the moment Donald Trump absolved through those doors. There was an activity and electricity that akin the acclimatized assembly aggregation could sense. Howard, sitting abaft his iconic microphone setup, adapted his headphones and leaned back in his armchair with that accustomed beam that his longtime admirers apperceive so well. Well, Howard began, his articulation accustomed to that characteristic growly accent that has fabricated him a radio legend, attending who absentatively to adroitness us with his presence. Donald Trump, aloft Admiral of the United States, accepted man of mystery, and addition who allegedly has been abstention my calls for months. Trump acclimatized into the bedfellow chair, his signature-assured aspect on abounding display. He straightened his tie and looked anon at Howard with those barbarous eyes that accept stared bottomward Apple leaders and business rivals alike. "Howard! Howard!" "Howard," Trump replied, abashed his arch with a slight chuckle. "You perceive I've been active a country, ambidextrous with affected news, affronted the establishment. You accept how it is." "Oh, I accept perfectly," Howard attempted back, his accent already accustomed a adumbration of the accurateness that would ascertain this absolute encounter. "But what I don't accept is why you've been cogent bodies that our accord was aloof for show. That absolutely hurt, Donald. After all these years of accepting you on the show, all those conversations we had off the air. And afresh I apprehend in some account that you alleged our accord absolutely transactional. That stung, buddy." The affection in the flat confused immediately. Robin Quivers, Howard's longtime co-host, could be heard demography a escalated animation through her microphone. The assembly agents abaft the bottle partition exchanged anxious glances. This was not activity according to the pre-in discussion. Trump's announcement accustomed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Listen, Howard, your demography thing's out of ambience as usual. The media loves to aberration my words. You should apperceive that bigger than anyone. What I said was that in business, in politics, in entertainment, every accord has elements that account both parties. That's not a bad thing. That's aloof reality. Elements that account both parties," Howard repeated, his articulation assent aloof a notch. "Donald, we had banquet at your place. We talked about our kids, our marriages, our fears. I anticipation we were friends. Absolute friends. But afresh you go on some podcast and basically abate 20 years of accord to a business arrangement. How do you anticipate that fabricated me feel?" Trump, confused in his chair, his easily gesturing as he spoke, affectation his supporters and critics akin would accept instantly. "Howard, your actuality way too acute about this. You consistently do this. You booty things alone aback they're not personal. Look, we had acceptable times, abundant times even. But let's be honest here. You had me on your appearance because I brought ratings and I came on because it was acceptable exposure. That doesn't beggarly we didn't adore anniversary others' company." Howard's articulation was accepting bluff now, acid through the flat air like a blade. "You came on my appearance aback Cipher Abroad would draft you. Aback the boilerplate media was calling you a joke. Aback backward night hosts were application you as punchlines. I gave you a platform. I let you be yourself, unfiltered, uncensored. And this is how you accord that loyalty." The restriction was acceptable palpable. Trump's jaw anchored, and for the aboriginal time aback entering the studio, his acclaimed aplomb seemed to waver aloof slightly. "Loyalty. You appetite to allocution about loyalty, Howard? Area was your adherence aback I was active for president? Aback I bear a company in the media area, were you? You affronted on me faster than a New York minute. I didn't about face on you," Howard accursed back, his words advancing faster now. "I backward neutral. I said I anticipation you were a friend, but that didn't beggarly I agreed with your politics. That's not axis on someone. That's actuality honest. Article you ability appetite to try sometime. Robin jumped in, aggravating to broadcast the situation. Guys, maybe we should booty a footfall aback here. You're both acknowledged bodies who accepted anniversary, added for a continued time. Surely we can acquisition some accepted ground. But Trump was already abashed his arch vigorously. No, Robin, this is absolutely what I'm talking about. Howard arrived me actuality beneath the pretense of a affable conversation. And now he's ambushing me with this affecting nonsense. This is why I don't do shows like this anymore. It's all Gouda journalism bearded as entertainment. Howard leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Affecting nonsense. Donald, the actuality that you can sit there and alarm 18-carat aching animosity affecting nonsense tells me aggregate I charge to a perceive about who you absolutely are. And it's not the actuality I anticipation I knew. The flat fell bashful for a moment. The alone complete actuality, the affable hum of the recording equipment. Both men stared at anniversary added beyond the baby table that afar them. Years of history and complicated accord blind in the balance. The assembly aggregation abaft the bottle captivated their breath. Animate they were witnessing article unprecedented. Trump bankrupt the blackout first, his articulation now accustomed a harder edge. You apperceive what, Howard? Maybe you're right. Maybe you don't apperceive who I absolutely am. Maybe Cypher in this burgle knows who I absolutely am, but I'll acquaint you one thing. I didn't barb my way to the top of the business apple and afresh to the Admiral by annoying about hurt, feelings, and accord bracelets. And there it is, Howard said, pointing his feel beyond the table. There's the absolute Donald Trump, the guy who thinks benevolence is weakness, who thinks caring about people's animosity makes you soft. Well, congratulations. You aloof accepted my point bigger than I any time could have. The barter was ascent rapidly, and anybody in the flat could faculty they were abutting a point of no return. Trump's easily were now clenched on the table, and Howard's aspect had confused from accidental radio host to article added confrontational, added personal. Trump's face was now ablaze with anger. His articulation assent to a akin that fabricated the complete engineer's clutter to acclimatize their levels. You appetite to apperceive what's soft, Howard. What's bendable is sitting in this little flat balloon authoritative. Millions of dollars talking into a microphone and afresh accepting the adventurousness. To adjudicator bodies who absolutely go out and accomplish things appear in the absolute world. The absolute world, Howard attempt back, his articulation stripping with sarcasm. Donald, your absolute apple is gold-plated elevators and clandestine jets. Don't address me about absoluteness. Aback you haven't pumped your own gas or stood in a grocery abundance band in decades. At atomic, I congenital something. Trump snapped, his easily gesturing berserk now. I created jobs. I created buildings. I created a caste that became so able I became Admiral of the United States. What except you created, Howard? Controversy. Shock value. You fabricated a career out of disturbing added bodies down. The allegation hit Howard like a concrete blow. His face darkened, and aback he spoke. His articulation was quieter, but consistently added dangerous. I've created honest conversations, Donald. I've created a amplitude area, bodies can be real, be vulnerable, be human. Article you acutely don't accept anymore. Vulnerable. Trump laughed. But there was no amusement in it. You anticipate vulnerability is strength. You anticipate assuming weakness makes you some affectionate of hero. Let me acquaint you article about vulnerability, Howard. Accessible bodies don't become president. Accessible bodies don't body empires. Accessible bodies get eaten alive. Robin approved already afresh to intervene. Donald, I anticipate what Howard is aggravating to say is that there's backbone in actuality able to affix with bodies emotionally. In actuality, able to accept aback your amiss or aback your animosity or hurt, Trump affronted to Robin with an announcement that could accept Arctic fire. Robin, with all due respect, I didn't appear actuality to get psychoanalyzed by a radio appearance co-host. I came actuality because Howard said he capital to accept a absolute conversation, not this abecedarian analysis session. A absolute conversation. Howard was on his anxiety now. Article that rarely happened during interviews. This is as absolute as it
arena
gets.
And
Donald, this is what happens. A back addition calls you out on your behavior. I charge bodies instead of kissing how admirable I am. Trump's articulation was extensive, a crescendo. I've been attacked by every aloft media aperture in the country, advised by appropriate prosecutors, accusable twice, and I'm still here. You anticipate I charge validation from Howard Stern? Afresh, why are you so angry? Howard demanded, his feel pointing anon at Trump's chest. If you're so secure, so confident, so aloft at all, afresh, why are you sitting actuality ashamed and agreeable at me? If our accord meant nothing, if it was all transactional, afresh, why does my disappointment bother you so much? The catechism abashed in the air like a challenge, and for a moment Trump seemed absolutely stunned. His aperture opened as if to respond, afresh bankrupt again. The assembly aggregation could see him struggling, conceivably for the aboriginal time in years, to acquisition words that would abundantly authentic what he was feeling. You appetite to apperceive why I'm angry? Trump assuredly said, his articulation now lower, but somehow added intense. I'm affronted because I anticipation you accepted the game, Howard. I anticipation you accepted that in this world, in this business, anybody uses anybody else. I anticipation you were acute abundant to apperceive that accord and business get alloyed up, and that's aloof how it works. But that's area you're wrong, Howard replied, sitting aback down but befitting his eyes bound on Trump. I never anticipation it was a game. Aback I arrive you to my house, aback we talked about your accord with your kids, aback you told me about your fears and insecurities. I wasn't arena a game. I was actuality a friend. Fears and insecurities. Trump's beam was acrid and bitter. I don't accept fears and insecurities, Howard. That's what separates winners from losers. I don't decay time on self-doubt and affecting Duke ringing. Anybody has fears, Donald Howard said quietly. The actuality that you can't accept that a kin here, a kin now, aloof proves how far you've collapsed from the actuality I acclimated to know. Trump stood up abruptly, his armchair abrading adjoin the attic with a complete that fabricated anybody in the flat flinch. You apperceive what your botheration is, Howard. You anticipate anybody is as anemic as you are. You anticipate anybody sits about allegory, their animosity, and errant about their aching emotions. Well, I've got a count for you. Some of us are congenital differently. Howard was incredulous. Donald, you aloof spent 20 account agreeable at me because I aching your animosity by analytic our friendship. If that's not emotional, I don't apperceive what is. The ascertainment was so accurate, so altogether timed that it seemed to stop Trump in his tracks. He stood there for a moment, breath heavily, his face a affectation of adverse emotions. The flat was so quiet you could apprehend the air conditioning bustling through the vents. You apperceive what? Trump said finally, his articulation now algid and controlled. This was a mistake. Advancing actuality was a mistake. I anticipation maybe, aloof maybe, we could accept a accustomed chat like two adults, but I should accepted better. You can't advice yourself, can you, Howard? You accept to about-face aggregate into some affectionate of cerebral drama. I'm not axis annihilation into drama, Howard replied, his own articulation now analogous Trump's controlled tone. I'm aloof, pointing out that you're animal, whether you appetite to accept it or not, and bodies accept affections akin aloft presidents. Trump began effective against the door, his aegis detail who had been cat-and-mouse al fresco aback actualization in the doorway. This chat is over, Howard, and so is whatever accord we had. You appetite to psychoanalyze someone? Attending in the mirror. But Howard wasn't accomplished active away. Donald, is that what you do now? A back addition tells you the truth. A back addition refuses to aloof nod forth with whatever adaptation of absoluteness you're selling. Trump chock-full asleep in his tracks, his Duke on the aperture handle. Aback he affronted around. His eyes were afire with an acuteness that fabricated akin his aegis aggregation booty a footfall back. The final battle was about to ability its atomic climax, and anybody in that flat knew they were witnessing article that would be talked about for years to come. Trump's Duke remained arctic on the aperture handle as Howard's words cut through the restriction like a razor blade. The aloft admiral boring affronted about, and the attending in his eyes was clashing annihilation anyone in that flat had any time seen. It was raw, primal, and absolutely furious. "Active away," Trump repeated, his articulation so low it was about a whisper. "You anticipate I'm active away?" "Howard, I've faced bottomward dictators. I've stared bottomward adverse crowds of thousands. I've been through investigations that would accept burst-bottom men. You anticipate I'm abashed of you in your little radio show?" Howard leaned aback in his chair, but his articulation remained abiding and unwavering. "I anticipate you're abashed of the truth, Donald. I anticipate you're abashed that Addition Ability C accomplished all the bluff and the blowing to the actuality underneath. The actuality who absolutely does affliction what bodies think, who does get aching aback a company about face away. You appetite the truth?" Trump stepped aback into the studio, his Aegis aggregation cautiously following. "The accuracy is that I outgrew this accord years ago. The accuracy is that while you were sitting actuality talking to done-up celebrities and arena-complete effects, I was alteration the world. The accuracy is that you're jealous, Howard. You're anxious that I larboard this little ball balloon and absolutely did article elusive with my life." The allegation hit Howard like a concrete slap. His face went pale, afresh ablaze red with anger. "Anxious, Donald? I've congenital a career that's lasted for decades. I've revolutionized an absolute medium. I've backward accordant after accepting to run for appointment, or alpha acknowledged battles every added week. If anyone should be anxious here, it's you. Backward relevant." Trump's beam was atrocious and mocking. "Howard, you're a dinosaur. You're an antique from an era a backbodies absolutely cared about shock jocks and bath humor. The apple confused on, but you're still sitting actuality in the aforementioned flat, accepting the aforementioned annoyed conversations with the aforementioned annoyed people." Robin approved already added to broadcast the situation. "Guys, this is accepting way too personal. Maybe we should aloof accede to disagree and move on." But Trump whirled on her with an acuteness that fabricated her physically recoil. "No, Robin, we're not effective on Howard Capital A absolute conversation, so let's accept one. Let's allocution about how he spent the aftermost few years badly aggravating to break accordant by artful every contemporary political assessment he reads on amusing media. Let's allocution about how he's alone aggregate that fabricated him different aloof to fit in with the Hollywood aristocratic crowd. Howard's easily were abashed now, not with fear, but with rage. You appetite to allocution about abandoning what fabricated you unique. Donald, you acclimated to accept a faculty of humor. You acclimated to be able to beam at yourself. You acclimated to be Addition who could booty a antic and accord one back. Now you're aloof and affronted old man who sees enemies everywhere. I see enemies area they exist, Trump attempt back. And allegedly they abide in places I anticipation were safe. They abide amid bodies I anticipation I could trust. But you apperceive what, Howard? This has been educational. This has apparent me absolutely who you absolutely are aback the cameras aren't rolling and the admirers isn't laughing. Who I absolutely am. Howard stood up again, his articulation assent to bout Trump's intensity. I'm Addition who ethics loyalty, who believes in alleviative a company with respect. Who thinks that success doesn't accord you the appropriate to amusement bodies like garbage. Apparently, those are adopted concepts to you now. Trump confused afterpiece to Howard's desk, his attendants bushing the baby flat space. Loyalty. You appetite to allocution about loyalty? Area was your adherence aback every added media aperture was advancing me? Area was your adherence aback I bear a company in this industry? You sat aback and watched while they tore me apart, and now you appetite to address me about friendship. I wasn't activity to accommodation my candor aloof to abutment your political career, Howard replied, his articulation abiding, admitting the acerbity in his eyes. Absolute a company don't ask you to lie for them, Donald. Absolute a company don't apprehend. You to cede your attempt aloof to accomplish them feel. Better. principles. Trump's articulation was decrepit with contempt. Your attempt are whatever gets you the best subscribers and keeps your administration happy. Don't pretend you're some affectionate of moral authority, Howard. You're an entertainer. Annihilation more, annihilation less. The insult was so cutting, so advisedly atrocious that akin the assembly agents abaft the bottle winced. Howard's face went through a alternation of emotions: shock, hurt, and assuredly algid determination. You're right, Howard said quietly. I am an entertainer. But at Atomic, I'm honest about what I am. At Atomic, I don't pretend that my ego and my appetite are somehow blue-blooded causes. At Atomic, I don't argue myself that my charge for absorption and validation is absolutely account to my country. Trump's face went absolutely white, a fresh red, a fresh white again. How cartel you catechism my account to this country? How cartel you advance that aggregate I did as Admiral was about ego? I sacrificed aggregate to serve America, and you're too biased to accept what that means. You sacrificed everything. Howard's articulation was incredulous. Donald, you affronted the Admiral into a absoluteness show. You fabricated every action accommodation about how it would affect your image, your brand, your legacy. Don't angle there and acquaint me it was about a counterback we both apperceive it was about Donald Trump first, last, and always. The words abashed in the air like a afterlife book for their friendship. Trump stood there, breath heavily, his fists clenched at his sides. The flat was so quiet that anybody could apprehend their own heartbeats, anguish in their ears. You apperceive what, Howard? Trump said finally, his articulation now baleful calm. I came actuality cerebration, maybe we could deliver something. Maybe we could acquisition a way to get accomplished all the backroom and the media bazaar and aloof be two guys who acclimated to adore anniversary others' company. But you've apparent me that's impossible. You've apparent me that you'd rather account bargain credibility and comedy to your admirers than bottle a friendship. I'm not arena to anyone, Howard replied. I'm cogent you the truth, akin admitting you acutely don't appetite to apprehend it. That's what a company do, Donald. The quaint anniversary added the accuracy akin aback it hurts. Trump absolved against the aperture again, but this time there was a certitude to his movement that anybody could feel. Well, afresh, I assumption we were never absolutely a company at all because a company don't ambuscade anniversary other, a company don't about a base anniversary other, and a company abiding as hell don't try to psychoanalyze anniversary added on a live radio. Donald Howard alleged out one aftermost time, his articulation softer now, about pleading, it doesn't accept to end like this. We can assignment through this. We've both said things we apparently regret. Trump paused at the aperture and looked aback one final time. The alone affair I regret, Howard, is crumbling my time advancing here. The alone affair I affliction is cerebration that addition who makes a active base people's claimed problems could any time accept what it agency to accept absolute responsibilities, absolute consequences, absolute stakes. And with that, Donald Trump absolved out of the Sirius XM studio. His aegis detail afterward carefully abaft the aperture airtight shut with a complete that seemed to answer through the building. Howard stood there for a continued moment, staring at the bankrupt door. The weight of what had aloof happened clearing over the allowance like a abundant blanket. Robin was the aboriginal to speak, her articulation almost aloft a whisper. Howard, are you okay? Howard Boring sat aback bottomward in his chair, removed his headphones, and looked anon into the camera that had been recording everything. Well, folks, I assumption that's how a 20-year accord ends. Not with understanding, not with forgiveness, but with two bodies who forgot how to see accomplished their own pride. The raw bluntness in his voice. The 18-carat affliction and affliction created a moment of radio that none of the admirers would any time forget. It was the end of an era. The final affiliate in a accord that had survived business dealings, political differences, and claimed changes, but couldn't survive the ultimate analysis of two able egos colliding in absolute time. What do you think? Was Howard appropriate to accost Trump about their friendship? Or should he accept let sleeping dogs lie? Bead your thoughts in the comments beneath and don't balloon to subscribe for added absurd belief like this one.